Howdy folks, it's 1of9 here from 1of9 TV, and today I'm going to be diving into a question that I saw on Reddit, where they were discussing whether the BZ-176 is overpowered. So, I saw this and I was like, I've played the BZ-176 and I've played against it, and I've never felt like it's that incredible of a tank. I've always felt like it's decent, definitely above average, but is it actually that insane of a tank? So I'm on Tomato GG right now, and we're gonna look at some statistics before I get into showing you some of my gameplay in the BZ that I played on stream, twitch.tv/1of9TV if you're interested in watching. But I played it on stream after I saw that article, just so I could get a feel for it before I did this video. Here we can see that the most played tank, heavy tank at tier 8, is the Type 63. And the second most played is the BZ-176, which tracks you typically around tier 8, see 1 per game, maybe 2. But here's where the important information comes in, it's the win rate. So it has the highest win rate of any tier 8 heavy tank at 55.3%. Now this is interesting, obviously just looking at that, I would agree with what they were claiming, that this tank is overpowered. There's also one other important bit of statistics right here. It is also played by one of the highest win rate percentages of the players that play it at 53.2%. That means that your average player that plays the BZ-176 wins 53.2% of his games, which is 4% above average at 49%, as you will win 49, draw 1, and lose 50 of pretty much every 100 battles or so. That shows you that the average player who's playing it is much better than the average World of Tanks player. And you look down the line, like you can see, there's a bunch of other tanks up here, which are definitely good. You got the Skoda T56, but most of these are being played at the Defender, is one of the most OP tanks at tier 8, but it's being played by your 50%ers. So I wonder, is this tank having such a good win rate just because the average player that plays it is that much better? Like if we go to win rate difference, if you wanted to go through this and actually look at what's the best tank, clearly it's the Gonzalo. The player win rate is lower than the BZ-176, but the win rate is increasing by a higher percent at 2.5%, up to 52%. So clearly that's a better tank because your players are winning more of their games in it. If a tank was perfectly balanced, a 50% win rate player, if he played 500 games in that tank, would win 250 or 50% of those 500 games. A slightly above average tank is going to win more of a higher percentage of their games, even if the player themselves isn't getting any better. What I think is actually happening that's contributing to the BZ-176 having such a high win rate is that it's an above average tank. No, not incredible, but it's definitely above average. But the players that are playing it are the players who are serious about the game, the ones who throw money at the loot boxes every year until they get all the tanks. Those are who's playing the BZ-176. And that is why the player win rate is 53%. For example, looking at, let's say, the Defender. I can almost guarantee you that the Defender, if it was played by a 53% average win rate player, would be winning way more than just 55% of its games, considering it already has a plus 2% increase in the win rate, or nearly plus 2%, and is being played by only slightly above average players on average. And you'll see as the win rates go down, for example, the 252U, same tank as the Defender, just without the skin, the average win rate of that tank goes down by 0.4%. And so the percentage increase in the win rate also goes down accordingly, because as your player base goes down, the effect that the tank being better than average has also goes down. And that kind of tracks, you see the Skoda T56, it's a good tank, but it's not as good as the Defender or the 252U because its win rate doesn't go up as much when compared to the win rate of the players that are playing it. And obviously you're not going to see any normal tech tree tanks on here because that includes stock win rate and everything. So basically all your highest increased win rates are always going to be premium tanks just because it doesn't include any stock games. So I think that's definitely part of the problem for the BZ-176 as to why people are thinking it's so OP. It's just simply because the tank is getting played by players who are much, much better than your average player. Like, there is a noticeable difference between a 53%er and a 49%er. And when the tank's slightly better than average, that just inflates the win rate. Like, it's just it's a bunch of things that are going in together to make the win rate so high. It's not the fact that, you know, your average player isn't going to get in the BZ-176 and win 55% of his games. No, you know, he might win 49%er and the BZ might win 50% of his games or 51% once you get into the high enough numbers of battles where it actually starts to level out. You know, you can't make a judgment on how good a tank is if you've only played 20 games in it, but once you've played 200, 300 games in a tank, your win rate's not going to jump around that much, and that's kind of where you're going to settle. I definitely think that the win rate is inflated just because of the fact that the players that are playing it are good. I decided to also go and play the tank a little bit, and I'll show that in a little because I got to do one more thing. I'm going to hop over to tanks.gg, and I'm going to show you the armor model of this thing so that if you do play against it, you know how to beat it. Alright, so I'm here on the BZ-176 page. You can see it's got pretty poor DPM with its AP, but with its HE, its DPM does go up to a decent amount. Damage per shot is 800. The pen is not great, and the fact that it doesn't get any shells that have more than 225 pen. Yes, you don't lose pen at distance, but 225 is standard pen on an IS-3. The IS-3 then goes up to 265 with its premium rounds, so 40 millimeters, that's a big jump. Its reload time isn't great at 23.9 seconds. Its rate of fire, 2.5 rounds a minute, not great. 3.3 second aim time and 0.44 dispersion are again not great, pretty standard for your derp guns, and doesn't have that many rounds, which admittedly at 2.5 rounds a minute isn't going to be a problem for most games. But if you're splitting your shells up between AP and HE, you got to make sure to pay attention to how many shells you fired. So let's go into the mobility real quick. And this is the big weakness of the tank. The fact that it's only got a 30 km/h top speed, which you can bump up with a turbo, but it will never be as mobile as even something like a Defender. And at 15 km/h reverse speed, if you can force the BZ to have to brawl with you, you'll beat it every single time. Tank traverse is alright, but it's got a poor power to rate ratio of 10. Now it does have the 4 rocket boosters, which allow it to get into position quickly, but the player has to know how to use that position. And it's got 4 uses, 10-second duration, and a 4-second cooldown, so you can use 2 to get into position really fast, but its mobility is poor when it doesn't have its rocket boosters ready. It looks like it's got pretty good hull armor and turret armor, but I'm going to show you the armor model. It's not what it seems. And 1550 health is pretty standard for a tier 8 heavy tank. And the view range is alright. It's not great, but it is alright. Anyways, what I wanted to look at was the 3D model. We're going to go to the live model. And this is versus its own AP rounds. And you can see that it can overmatch the entirety of the roof of its own turret. So anything that has big rounds will overmatch this turret, as the actual armor thickness is 41 millimeters. That means any gun 124 millimeters or bigger will overmatch the turret every single time, regardless of what angle you hit it at. Because even here, as you can see, it's because of the overmatch mechanics, it will overmatch every single time. HE doesn't have the same overmatch mechanics, but you can still, with its HE rounds, you can still pen its commander hatches, which are quite easy to hit. Like, they're quite large. They stick up pretty substantial amount over the roof of the tank, and you can hit them every single time. As long as it's not using the absolute maximum of its gun depression, you can definitely hit those commander hatches. Alright, so now we're going to compare it to a tank that I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to consider overpowered, and that is the American T-32. So against its AP rounds, you can see, especially given the fact that the T-32 is going to be shooting down on this thing, it's got pretty good chance of penning both its commander's hatches. They're pretty big for this tank. You can pen the lower plate every single time. You can pen the upper plate about 50% of the time with standard. And if you load APCR, it goes up to anywhere from like 60 to 70%, 100% still in the lower plate, and you still have a 30% chance of penning that slightly less angled bit. That's where the actual 240 thickness armor is. And again, commander's hatch is really easy to pen. So given all this, it doesn't look statistically that this tank's going to be that insane. So let's hop right into the gameplay. And I'm going to show you what I actually felt while playing the tank, but let's get right into the gameplay. and I'll show you exactly what happened for me in those 5 or 6 games I played in it last night on stream. That's unfortunate. I mean, I bounced one shot and the Scorp didn't hit anything that it could damage, so... I mean, the armor's holding up, but it's only against an RU. It's the problem with this. $200 damage and I hit his weak point. There we go, penned it. But like, this thing doesn't feel like the OP monster that Reddit would like you to believe. Like, I haven't done anything wrong here. Cool. A KV2 could have done that shot, so... I'm not overly impressed. Thank you for smacking the, he's not gonna pen me. Hit the gun, definitely. $39 damage. $91. Really? See, I hit him with 3 and him with 2 for a total of 500 damage. That's not even 1 shell's worth. No BZ on the enemy team, so according to Reddit, I should be able to just steamroll this entire game without even trying. I'm gonna switch to HE for the start. Let's go all the way this way. Try and get as aggressive as possible. Got lit. Here's the Pantera. Not a big deal. Alright, AMX M4. I mean, that shot was obviously going to pen. I don't know what that ELC is trying to accomplish there, by the way. Accuracy. Really unfortunate, Mr. Leva. Mr. T-32. But your sacrifice... There we go. I mean, this Lurv is playing like an idiot. That's why I'm able to damage him, because he's sitting there with his lower plate in front of me. Like, yeah, I can pen his lower plate with this tank if you just give it to me. And he's probably going to go rage on freaking Reddit now. Oh, I can't kill BZ. Like, yeah, dude, you sat there with your lower plate in front of me, like, the entire time. Like, obviously I was going to kill you. Oh boy. HE should have killed him for 20 damage, but nope. I don't get it. Like, yeah, this game's gonna statistically look amazing, but didn't do anything. Like, I farmed a Lurva. because he was giving me his lower plate. I got that lucky shot on the M4 and that was most of my damage. But like contrast it with the other game where the VK's playing smart, the IS-3 was playing smart, 500 damage in 5 shots. So I don't know. Yeah, cool, I topped the team. You actually look at where my damage came from. 1500 of that went to the Lerva. Because this Lerva player, if I'm gonna look at him, no offense, but he's not that great, and he literally sat there giving me his lower plate the entire time. See, this guy played decent. He's not even a great player, but he didn't give me his lower plate. He didn't give me easy opportunities for damage. Let's see, what else did I get? I got that lucky shot on the M4. Woohoo. Big deal. 397, I didn't pen him once. I hit him 2 or 3 times, and then 1 pen into an ELC. Yeah, obviously Dirt Gun's gonna pen an ELC. My damage total was much bigger than everybody else in this game, but I didn't just roll through people. People made mistakes. Like that ELC, he just sat there where I could shoot him. The Lerva just sat there where I could pen his lower plate. The only one guy who actually tried to play smart in the Skoda, or somewhat smart, didn't just give me easy damage, was the guy in the Skoda, and I did not even 400 to him. If you play smart against this thing, it's an easy win. It's very easy to beat. Like, it's got massive weak points on top. Like, it's got 2 massive weak points. You can shoot it, especially when you're on flat ground. It's relatively low profile, so taller tanks can shoot down onto the turret. It's not as good as Reddit wants you to believe. Alright everyone, thank you all so much for watching. You've been epic. Hopefully you liked my review of the BZ-176 and whether or not it is overpowered. I actually quite enjoyed doing this. It was an interesting experience to actually dive into something and see what I felt and give it my opinions to you guys. But if you did like it, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on Twitch in case you want to watch me play tanks live. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Thanks and goodbye.